Let me start with something honest, something a little uncomfortable. Not everyone can pay for English classes. Not everyone can go to an institute or hire a teacher or travel abroad. And maybe that includes you. It includes me too. There was a moment in my life when I really wanted to learn English, but I had no money, no connections, no opportunities, just a phone and a lot of frustration. So today's question is simple but powerful. Can you really learn and practice English alone? And more importantly, how? Today, I'm not alone. I'm here with someone who has spent more than 20 years teaching English in different countries, different environments, and with all kinds of students, rich, poor, beginners, advanced, motivated, and completely lost. He has seen everything. So today, we're going deep. Welcome, teacher. Thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me. And I really like how you started this conversation because what you said is very real. Many people believe that learning English is only for people with money, but that is not true. In fact, some of the best students I have ever seen learned English alone with almost nothing. What they had was not money, but a strategy, discipline, and a clear reason. That's powerful because I think many people feel stuck. They think, I need a teacher, I need a course, I need to pay. And when they can't, they just give up. So let me ask you directly, can someone really learn English alone? Yes, but let me be very honest here. You can learn English alone, but you cannot learn English passively. That is the big difference. Many people are alone, but they are passive. They watch videos, scroll, listen a little, but they don't practice. And English is a skill. It's like learning to swim. You can watch 1,000 videos about swimming, but if you never enter the water, you will never learn. That hits hard because I think many people do that. They watch videos every day, but they don't improve. Why does that happen? Because they confuse exposure with practice. Watching is exposure, listening is exposure, but speaking, writing, thinking, that is practice. And if you are learning alone, you need to become your own teacher, your own coach, and sometimes even your own student. Wow, your own teacher, your own coach, and your own student. That sounds difficult. It is difficult, but it is also powerful because when you learn alone, you develop something that many students in academies never develop: independence. You stop depending on someone to correct you every second. You learn to observe yourself, to notice your mistakes, to fix them step by step. Let me tell you a real story. Many years ago, I had a student in a small town. He could not pay for classes. He only came once every 2 weeks. That was all he could afford. But every time he came, he had pages and pages of notes. He practiced speaking alone in his room every day. He recorded his voice. He listened again. He corrected himself. He repeated the same sentences many times. After 1 year, his level was higher than students who came to class every day. That's crazy. So, what made the difference? Simple. He didn't just consume English, he used English every day, even if he was alone. I think this is important because many people feel embarrassed to speak alone. It feels weird, it feels uncomfortable. Of course, it feels weird because you're doing something new. But let me ask you something. Is it more uncomfortable to speak alone in your room or to stay stuck for years without improving? When you say it like that, yeah, it makes sense. Growth is uncomfortable, and learning a language is emotional. You will feel stupid sometimes. You will feel slow. You will forget words. But that is part of the process. Let's talk about that because many people quit. They start learning English alone, but after a few weeks, they stop. Why? There are three main reasons, and I have seen this for 20 years. First, they don't have a clear system. They just do random things every day. One day, they watch a video. The next day, they download an app. Then they stop. Then they try something else. There is no structure. Second, they expect fast results. They think they will speak fluently in 1 or 2 months. And when that doesn't happen, they feel frustrated. And third, they feel alone, not physically, but emotionally. They feel like no one understands their struggle, and that kills motivation. That third one, I think many people will connect with that because when you study alone, it feels like nobody sees your effort. Exactly. And that is why mindset is very important. Very important. When you learn alone, you need to create your own environment, your own motivation, your own routine. Okay, so let's get practical now. Imagine someone is listening right now. They have no money, no teacher, no academy, just a phone, maybe internet, maybe not always. Where do they start? They start with one simple principle: use English every day. Not study, use. What's the difference? Studying is learning rules, using is applying them. For example, instead of just learning vocabulary like eat, drink, go, you create sentences. I eat rice every day. I drink coffee in the morning. I go to work at 8 a.m. Simple sentences, but real, personal, connected to your life. So it's more active. Exactly. And here's a powerful strategy: talk about your life. You don't need complicated topics, you don't need advanced vocabulary. Just describe your day. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing now? What will you do tomorrow? If you can talk about your life, you are already building fluency. Wow, that sounds simple, but I think many people don't do it because they think it's too simple. But simple is powerful. Let me tell you something: fluency is not about big words, it's about small words used well. Oh, wow, that's a great line. And here comes another important strategy: repetition with variation. Don't just say one sentence one time, repeat it, but change it. I eat rice every day. I eat chicken every day. I eat rice at night. I don't eat rice every day. You are training your brain. You are building patterns. So basically, you are creating your own practice system. Exactly. Because if you are alone, you need to create your own system. Let me ask you something personal. In your 20 years of experience, have you seen someone who failed completely learning alone? Yes, many times. Why did they fail? Not because they were not intelligent, not because they had no resources. They failed because they were inconsistent. They started strong and then stopped, then started again and stopped again. Learning English is not about intensity, it's about consistency. That's interesting because many people try to study 5 hours in one day and then nothing for a week. Exactly. It's better to practice 20 minutes every day than 5 hours once a week. Okay, I feel like we are just getting started. There's so much more to talk about, especially how to practice speaking alone, how to think in English, and how to stay motivated when nobody is pushing you. Yes, and we haven't even talked about the biggest mistake people make when practicing alone. Okay, now you really got my attention. You said there's a big mistake people make when they practice English alone. I think many people listening right now are probably making that mistake. So please tell us, what is it? The biggest mistake, and I say this with complete confidence after 20 years of teaching, is that people wait to feel ready before they start speaking. They think, I will speak when I know more vocabulary, when I understand grammar better, when I feel more confident. But that moment never comes because confidence is not something you get before speaking, it is something you build by speaking. So, what happens is very sad. People spend months, even years, learning passively, preparing, consuming content, but they never activate the language. And English stays in their head, but never reaches their mouth. Let me explain this in a simple way. Imagine you want to learn how to drive. You read books about driving, you watch videos, you understand the theory perfectly, but you never sit in the car. Will you become a good driver? Of course not. Speaking English works exactly the same way. You need real practice, even if it's imperfect, even if it's slow, even if you make mistakes every sentence. That is not failure, that is training. That makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, it's scary because when you are alone, there's nobody to correct you. So, how do you know if you are doing it right? That is a very important question, really important. And I'm glad you asked it because this is where many learners get stuck. When you are alone, you don't need perfection, you need awareness. Let me repeat that, not perfection, awareness. You need to start noticing patterns. For example, if you always say, he go to work instead of he goes to work, that's a pattern. And once you notice it, you can correct it. One of the most powerful techniques I recommend is something very simple, but very effective. Record yourself. Use your phone. Speak for 1 or 2 minutes about your day, your plans, your opinions. Then listen to yourself. At first, you will feel uncomfortable. You may even hate your voice. That's normal. But after a few days, something interesting happens. You start hearing your mistakes. And that is the moment when real learning begins. I think many people avoid that because it feels embarrassing. Yes, and that is exactly why it works. Growth is always on the other side of discomfort. And let me tell you something very honest. Nobody's listening to those recordings except you. There's no audience, no judgment. It is your private space to improve. Now, let me give you another powerful technique that changed the way many of my students learned English alone. It's called self dialogue. Instead of just speaking alone in one direction, you create a conversation with yourself. You become two people. For example, you can say, hi, how are you? I'm good, thank you. And you? I'm a little tired. I worked all day. And you continue like that. It may feel strange at the beginning, but it trains your brain to think faster, to react, to build sentences in real time. And that is exactly what happens in real conversations. That actually sounds very practical, like you are simulating real life. Exactly. Because if you don't have people around you to practice, you create the situation. You don't wait for opportunities, you build them. And now I want to talk about another technique that is extremely powerful, but not many students, many people use correctly: shadowing. Many people think shadowing is just repeating what they hear, but real shadowing is much deeper than that. It is about copying rhythm, intonation, pronunciation, and emotion. You take a short audio, maybe 10 or 15 seconds. You listen carefully. Then you repeat it at the same time as a speaker, trying to match everything, not just the words, but the way the words sound. You repeat it again and again and again. Not 2 times, maybe 10 times, 15 times, until your mouth starts to feel comfortable with those sounds. What you are doing is training your muscles, not just your brain, because speaking is physical. Your mouth, your tongue, your lips, they need practice too. I never thought about it like that, that speaking is physical. Yes, and that's why many people understand English but cannot speak it, because they trained their ears, but not their mouth. Now, let me share something very important, something that many people don't like to hear, but they need to hear it. If you practice English alone, you will make mistakes, many mistakes, and you will repeat some of those mistakes for a while. That is normal. That is part of the process. The problem is not making mistakes. The problem is not noticing them and not correcting them over time. So, what can you do? You combine exposure with correction. You listen to correct English every day: podcasts, videos, conversations, and you compare it with your own English. Little by little, your brain starts to adjust. So it's like calibrating yourself. Exactly. That's a perfect word. Calibrating. You are constantly adjusting your English based on what you hear and what you produce. Now, I want to talk about something deeper, something emotional, because learning alone is not just a technical challenge, it is also a psychological challenge. There will be days when you don't feel motivated, days when you feel stuck, days when you feel like you are not improving. And in those moments, discipline is more important than motivation. That's powerful because motivation comes and goes. Exactly. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is what keeps you moving. And discipline does not mean doing something big. It means doing something small every day. Even if it's just 10 minutes, even if you are tired, even if you don't feel like it, you show up. You speak a little, you listen a little, you write a few sentences, and that consistency over weeks and months creates results. Let me tell you about another student. She was a mother. She had 2 children. She worked all day, and she had almost no free time. She told me, "Teacher, I can study only 15 minutes a day." And I said, "Perfect, but do it every day." After 6 months, her English was not perfect, but she could communicate. She could express ideas. She could understand basic conversations. Why? Because she was consistent. I think many people underestimate the small effort. Yes, because they are looking for fast results. But language learning is not fast, it is gradual. It's like building a muscle. You don't see results in one day, but if you train consistently, your body changes. Now, before we finish this part, I want to give something very practical. A simple daily routine for someone who is completely alone and has no money. Alright, very simple. First, 5 to 10 minutes of listening. Choose something simple, a short video, a podcast, something you can understand at least 60 or 70%. Don't choose something too difficult. Second, 5 to 10 minutes of speaking. Talk about your life, use self dialogue, describe your day, repeat sentences. Don't stay silent. Third, 5 minutes of review. Think about what you said. What was difficult? What words did you not know? Try to improve one small thing. That's it. You don't need 2 hours. You need consistency. That actually feels doable, even for someone busy. Yes, learning English alone is not about having more resources. It's about using what you already have in a smart way. And I want to leave you with one final reflection. If you are listening to this right now and you feel like you are behind, like you started late, like you don't have enough, remember this: progress does not depend on where you start, it depends on what you do every day. That's a great way to end this. Honestly, I feel like this conversation can help a lot of people who feel stuck or lost. I hope so. Because no one should feel like learning English is impossible just because they don't have money. It is not easy, but it is possible.